Here with us now is our political power panel. We have Democratic strategist Emily Suttle-Braun and Republican strategist Marley Hornick. Nice to see both of you today. Emily, I'm going to start with you. These funding bills in the SAVE Act are in a standoff right now in the Senate, essentially. So is it going to help or hurt Republicans in the midterms if the SAVE Act and extra defense funding is passed?
I think it's not necessarily whether it's passed so much as the internal strife that you're seeing and the erosion in Trump's own coalition. This is true of voters. This is beginning to be true of the legislature itself, and not being able to get anything done when you have control of the House, the Senate, and the White House is embarrassing.
All right, well, this week, the White House issued warnings to Republican Senate leaders saying the president is losing his patience. Marley, I'll get to you on this one. What could it mean if these Republican senators refuse to get in line with the president's agenda?
Well, honestly, Anna, something that a lot of people have missed, apparently, is that the president doesn't need the Senate to pass the SAVE Act. We already have the SAVE Act on steroids. It was ratified by the American people in 1789. It's the second sentence of the United States Constitution that says that the states are responsible for qualifying every single voter in a federal election according to state law. It doesn't tell the states how to do it, but it sanctions them criminally under federal law for failing. So actually, what the president needs to do is stop focusing on Thune, allow the Senate to do what it can to improve the appearance of the Republican Party heading into the midterms, and order the DOJ to start prosecuting states that refuse to clean their lists and have counted votes from illegal voters, which is something that Real America Vote just proved in the Mamdani election, where the New York City and New York State boards of elections failed to qualify 7% of the voters because they don't exist. You cannot qualify fake people to vote in the United States of America.
All right, Marley, what are your thoughts on what's happening in Maine? That race could be a major factor in which party has Senate control. Troy Jackson, now the Democratic nominee, he's going to be facing off Republican Senator Susan Collins.
Well, he's very popular, right? He's already been the president of the Maine State Senate. Something I think is kind of interesting about him in regards to some of the negatives about the president, the way he's perceived right now, is that Troy Jackson, when he was a pro-life Republican, actually led a blockade at the Canadian border to prevent Canada from leveraging its own economic interests against the United States logging industry. So he actually has a tremendous amount in common with the president, although he did flip to becoming a pro-choice Democrat in 2004 and has remained that way since then. So I just thought those were interesting parallels, and we'll see if they come up in the media.
Yeah, look, I wasn't familiar with him, so I've had to study up, and I didn't realize he'd switched from being part of the Republican Party either, now endorsed by Bernie Sanders. Emily, does Troy Jackson have the charisma and the policy platform to get voters to flip this seat? And, do you believe you'd be in better shape? Susan Collins is seen as a moderate.
She has traditionally been seen as the moderate. I think that she's losing ground there. And this has become one of Troy Jackson's sort of slogans in the last 24 hours, is like she acts concerned in situations where she's coming up against Trump and then typically votes with him anyway. So, I think that her ground as a moderate has been slipping for a long time. I think this is the first time that she's been up for re-election since Roe fell, and that she's a wildly unpopular candidate in the state and in New England, where you've seen a big shift into progressive politics over the last decade. So I don't think it truly mattered who the Democratic candidate was in this case. I'm glad to see that we were able to quickly shift gears and get a popular candidate in the race. But I have no doubt he's gonna beat her.
Well, and just to remind our viewers, we're spending so much time on Maine because it could impact the balance of power. And Jackson is already going after Collins' record aligning with Trump. Listen here.
I do have one question. Who has she served? She has served Donald Trump. She voted with him 96% of the time. She helped deliver enormous tax breaks to the corporations and the wealthy on our backs, and she voted to confirm Kavanaugh and Gorsuch.
So, Marley, is this a strong case against Collins for folks in Maine, or do Democrats need a larger message?
No, it's not going to work. And again, he's talking about the tax cuts for corporations. What about the tax cuts for American families and for the working class that the big, beautiful bill brought to the people of Maine? So as soon as the president and the Republican Party start countering the message with facts about how they have improved the economic circumstance for those working class people, I think that those really empty statements he's making are going to fall flat. And you know, you have to remember, I realize we're talking about Roe here, but Roe didn't turn out to be the worst case scenario, ending it, because the states that want to have abortion still have it. And in fact, you have states passing more and more radical abortion laws, allowing abortion up to the final moment before delivery of a child. So I don't think that these particular arguments are going to really carry a lot of water with the people of Maine.
Emily, the president is headed to Michigan this week and is expected to tout the economic wins ahead of the state's primary election. So, Emily, will this framing help progressive candidates in Michigan who are running on frustrations around the economy? I also saw you shaking your head there.
Yeah, I mean, I think it will. I think he's doing damage control in Michigan, and you know, I disagree profoundly with what my colleague said about the economy in Maine, about voters in Maine, and this extends to Maine, this extends to Michigan, this extends to the entire country. When you have, you know, an administration who has passed tariffs and is about to pass more tariffs that are, at the end of the day, detrimental to the wallets of voters. You know, I'm on a road trip at the moment, heading back from Atlanta to DC, and you could see it yesterday at the pumps, just the frustration, the you know, like sadness in people's eyes as gas prices continue to climb. The big beautiful bill stripped away infrastructure for solar and for EV chargers. So, you know, the lines for EV chargers as well as gas pumps are really long. And this is, you know, the dog days of summer. I think, you know, between the tariffs, between the Iran war, between, you know, the quibbling on the Senate floor, there's nothing being done here to improve economic standards for voters. And that's starting to erode the coalition. Voters are saying this.
Marley, as we do look ahead to the midterms, does Emily have a point? You know, if you were advising him, would you recommend he have a softer tone and explain why we're doing what we're doing and let them know that their concerns are being heard more? Or do you think he's doing a good job?
I don't think it's a bad thing to go to Michigan and tell the people of Michigan that the tariffs are helping to reshore industry and manufacturing in the United States of America. You know, there's reports that the happiness quotient in the country has halved since 1990. Okay, twice as many people find their lives to be meaningless as they did in 1990, which aligns exactly with you know, the time of the passage of Bayh-Dole and the NAFTA, the first NAFTA agreement. And also the shutting down of the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, when you know, a lot of our oil started coming from the Middle East instead of coming through American production. So basically, he's going to be able to make an argument, hey, actually, these tariffs are designed to fix something that started 30 years ago. And this goes back to what he said on the campaign trail in 2016. The system is rigged. You know it, I know it, everybody knows it. And that message can still resonate as long as he can help people understand that this short-term economic pain leads to the reshoring of industry in this country, manufacturing jobs, productivity that we haven't seen in a generation. I think he's got a very powerful winning message if he positions it correctly. And he's going against a party that is now being led by Mamdani, and it's a colossal failure. Mamdani, the mayor of Seattle, it's a colossal failure. Money is gushing out of those cities, and those mayors are going to be stuck, and those governors are going to be stuck trying to figure out how to pay for a raft of social programs when their biggest taxpayers are leaving for Florida.
I'll tell you what, they're tapping into some anger that is festering, not just in the Democratic Party. Democratic strategist Emily Suttle-Braun and Republican strategist Marley Hornick, thank you so much for weighing in, both of you. Thank you.